Well, I've learned a lot this morning, I must say, a lot. I learned of great deficiencies in my own brain, deficiencies probably physiological as well as developmental, but nonetheless, I've always wondered if I could put my finger on what was wrong. But I got some news, and I was delighted to learn, too, that the business school is turning to the environment. Harvard Business School should turn to the environment because they've been instruments in destroying a lot of environment over the past 75 years. But I came from a very good meeting just now, just 45 minutes ago with many of you, some of you. And I learned what I'm going to talk about there. I learned that we lack a vision as to where we're going. People ask me all the time what I do, and I say, well, I work in a center that works on the question of how the world works as a biophysical system. And we think we know a lot about that issue. We know that the world isn't working, and all of you share that view, I'm sure. It's not working, first, from a climatic standpoint. We have this terrible problem with climatic disruption. In effect, we are pulling the environment right out from under all life on Earth, just changing the environment out from under it. And most of us realize that that's the best way to get rid of a species, any species, whether they're rats and mice or whatever, including people. And so that's a very serious matter. I'll talk a little bit more about that. But I don't want to ignore the fact that we are also engaged in making other big changes in the world, all of which affect how the world works. The population problem has been mentioned this morning. It's real, 6.5 billion, 7 billion, going toward 8 billion people, and using all the resources of the earth, even as we do other things that erode those resources. The toxification problem. There is no water on Earth that doesn't feel and carry the effects of contemporary industrial agriculture. That's been on the front page of the New York Times within the past 6 months. The changes in the Earth that I refer to as biotic impoverishment, and others refer to as losses of biodiversity, are rampant. They're occurring at a high speed. And if one wonders where that leads, just look around the world for places where biotic impoverishment has proceeded to the extreme. Look at Haiti, for instance, before the earthquake. Haiti has maybe 10,000 square miles, about 10 million people. It's now down to about 0.6 of an acre per person. Much of that land mountainous. It has rivers that do not flow in the same channel each time it rains because the channels are filled up with silt eroded from the forest-depleted mountains. No fisheries. The silt in the rivers has substantially buried the coastal zone, the marine coastal zone, and the fisheries had previously been depleted. So Haiti is a good example, but it isn't alone. There are many other nations around the world that suffer from the same degree of what I think of as biotic impoverishment. Now, Haiti has gone to the point where it can't repair itself. It's clear from the earthquake that Haiti is not at all resilient. Before the earthquake, it was not at all resilient. Haiti is in what I think of as an abyss, an environmental abyss, in the sense that they are so deeply into trouble with a dysfunctional environment that they can't have a stable government, don't have an economic system that we would recognize as an economic system capable of supporting 5 million people, let alone 10. Can't pull itself up by its bootstraps. If Haiti is repaired from the state that it was in even before the earthquake, it would take billions of dollars from outside, just as it has taken billions of dollars, or certainly tens or hundreds of millions, to repair New Orleans, which hasn't yet been repaired. New Orleans is another good example, destroyed environmentally beyond the point where it could restore itself without massive help from outside. Same way with the Gulf Coast. Say, not the golf course. Somalia, we can walk around the world and find other examples, but it takes a functional environment, a stable, functional environment that's capable of supporting an agriculture, supporting a water supply that's clean, capable of supporting an economy that can work and support people, to have a government. It takes all three of those to have civilization. We are busy in various ways pulling the environment out from under this civilization. It's a serious matter, and it's happening very rapidly. You know all the details, I'm sure, of the transitions that we attribute to the climatic disruption. They're rapid. They are indeed rapid. Sea level rise, expanding deserts, deserts expanding into current agricultural land, the decline of forests through increased frequency of burning, through simply changing the climate out from under the trees, which become then vulnerable to all sorts of diseases, particularly bark borers, and you've heard about what's happening to forests in southern Alaska and elsewhere across North America and Asia, all as the climate is moved out from under a forest that can't move with the climate. Well, those are big changes. We work on forests. We work on forests because they are so big in the world. Secondary to the oceans, they have a very powerful influence on climates globally. So they are second in importance from the standpoint of biophysical effects. The New York Times had a wonderful picture. You probably didn't recognize how wonderful it was, or at least impressive. A few months ago, late September, on the front page, a colored picture showing a piece of the Amazon, Pará, state of Brazil. On the left side of the picture was intact forest, the tropical forests of the Amazon basin. On the right was soy agriculture. They'd cleared the forest, ripped up all the roots, everything else, and planted soybeans. Well, if you've ever walked in the tropical forest and then stepped across that boundary between the forest and the soybean patch, you have had an experience that everybody should have. It's just an astonishing experience. Going from a place that's cool and rich in every respect into a place that's burdened with the sun. The weight of the sun is just incredible. The forest has perhaps 5 different layers of leaves which absorb the sun, use it, of course, and evaporate water into the atmosphere. That water is taken out of a soil which is tapped by roots which go as deep as 40 or 60 feet. As one of our staff members had a major research program on that very issue, and we dug wells that went down that deep and found roots of those trees at those depths. So all of that depth of soil is available to support the trees, the forest, even during periods of drought, and does. And the water picked up by the forest and evaporated into the atmosphere, of course, absorbs a good deal of that solar energy and carries it off as water vapor. And it's carried into the atmosphere to be precipitated out, maybe lost locally, watering the forest downwind, which is to the northwestward, and accumulates, having passed through the forest several times, in the Andes, or at the base of the Andes, in the northwestern part of the Amazon basin, which is the wettest place in the Amazon. It's very wet.